Hey everyone, I'm Mia. Welcome to Her Court Daily. Today's WNBA story is honestly wild. Jessica's got the full breakdown.
Mia called it wild, and she's not wrong. The entire firestorm swallowing the WNBA right now comes down to a single sentence buried inside a legal document, and one word sitting in the middle of it that nobody in the league office will define. The 2026 collective bargaining agreement, the one signed back in March of this year, states that only players who are women are eligible to play in the WNBA. That is it. That is the whole rule. There is no follow-up sentence. There is no definition of the word woman anywhere in that agreement. No chromosome standard, no hormone threshold, no medical protocol, nothing. And then on Wednesday, August 12th, after a task force of team presidents and general managers met on a closed video call, the league released a statement saying there are no immediate eligibility matters affecting the WNBA, and that it strongly denounces what it called bad faith efforts to use these topics to demean or marginalize others. Read that again because it is doing two jobs at once. It is telling you nothing is wrong, and it is telling you to stop asking. That is the story everybody is arguing about on your timeline right now, and almost nobody has actually read the paperwork. So we did. And what is inside that memo, what the league quietly reviewed, what never got released, and why one player from Indiana became the lightning rod for all of it, is genuinely stranger than the version you have been fed. There is also one detail from a courtside seat in Seattle that got a team owner punished by the league. And we will get to exactly what happened there because that is the moment this stopped being an internet argument and started being an actual disciplinary case. Hit that like button right now and drop a comment telling me whether the league should just publish a written policy and be done with it, because the comment section on this one is going to be a war zone. And honestly, I want to read every single one of them. Let's rebuild the timeline properly, because the order of events matters more than anything. It starts with an ESPN profile of Sophie Cunningham published on July 21st of this year. In that piece, Cunningham said she had received a lot of negative feedback about supposedly hating trans people, and her response was blunt. She said she never once said that she is here to extend love, but that with love comes truth and honesty, and that she wants to protect young girls in a locker room or young girls in sport who she believes should not have to go against biological men. Now here is the wrinkle almost nobody reported. Cunningham later told reporters that the interview itself actually happened back in March. So the quote that detonated the league in the middle of a playoff race was sitting in a notebook for roughly 4 months before it ever saw daylight. Think about the timing of that for a second. Then the next day, before Indiana walked into a game against Brittney Griner's Connecticut Sun, Cunningham was asked to expand on it in front of a room full of cameras. She did not soften a single syllable. She said what she said, that she thinks it is common sense, that she will always believe it, and that protecting children matters to her. Then she pointed straight at the legal backbone of her whole argument, saying that is exactly why Title IX exists, and that if Title IX and women's sports were not protected, you would not hear about women in sport at all. But that wasn't the whole story because of what happened on the floor that same night. Indiana went out and hung 123 points on Connecticut, winning by a scoreline of 123-88. That was a franchise record for points in a single game. And they also set a franchise record with 70 points in a single half. Caitlin Clark finished with 27 points and 11 assists and was absolutely surgical. Cunningham played 21 minutes and scored 8 points. And here is the detail that tells you everything about the night. Every single one of those 8 points came from the free throw line. She did not need a jump shot to be the most talked about person in the building. And the pregame moment was even better, because Griner, her former teammate of 6 seasons in Phoenix, walked up and copied Cunningham's now famous silent finger point on camera. 2 women on opposite sides of the loudest cultural argument in American sports, laughing together before tip-off. Griner also told ESPN that playing against Cunningham is, in her words, annoying as crap, but that when she is your teammate, you would not want anybody else. That is respect. That is teammates. Remember that, because the internet version of this story looks nothing like that. And that brings us to the part of this I have been dreading, because it is the part that has been dressed up as a scoop for years, and it is the part where I am going to be straight with you instead of feeding you what gets clicks. There is a rumor mill that has followed Brittney Griner around since long before the Russia detention. An ugly one, questioning her identity. built on nothing but grainy screenshots, a supposedly untouched social media video, and an entire cottage industry of people insisting that some algorithm somewhere had secretly classified her. I want to be extremely clear about this. That claim has never been substantiated by anyone, anywhere, at any point. It has never been reported by a credible outlet. There has never been a published league finding, a disciplinary file, a medical review, or an eligibility challenge involving her. Griner is a woman. She has been drafted, tested, medaled, and vetted at literally every level of this sport, and there is no secret dossier sitting in a vault in New York with her name on the cover. So the question people keep asking, why won't the league release the findings, has an answer nobody wants to hear. You cannot leak a file that does not exist. But here is where it gets genuinely interesting, and this is the part almost nobody noticed. The league confirmed something far more revealing than any rumor. In that same statement, the WNBA said there are no immediate eligibility matters affecting the league. Not that a review cleared anybody. Not that an investigation concluded. That there are no matters at all. And ESPN's reporting spelled out the rest of it plainly. The WNBA has no publicly available policy governing eligibility of transgender or intersex athletes, and no known transgender woman has ever played in the league. So the entire national screaming match, the protests, the rallies, the sideline shirts, all of it, is happening over a hypothetical. And the league's actual, real, documented problem is not any individual player. It is that the most important word in its own name is legally undefined in its own contract. That is the withheld truth here. Not a cover-up about a person, a vacuum where a policy should be. So what did the commissioner actually do about it? On Friday, August 7th, Cathy Engelbert sent a memo to team presidents and general managers, and it leaked almost immediately, obtained by both the Associated Press and ESPN. In it, Engelbert acknowledged that many teams had been fielding questions about eligibility guidelines in recent weeks and said she expected the topic to continue receiving significant attention. She thanked executives who had answered media questions with thoughtfulness and professionalism. Then came the line that got roasted from coast to coast, calling it a complex and nuanced topic that the league would continue discussing with teams and the Players Association in the weeks and months ahead, adding that the league planned to convene additional discussions and offer listening sessions for any team leaders who wanted to participate. Listening sessions. A commentator on the political side of the internet, Brett Cooper, absolutely torched that phrasing on camera, essentially asking why the league that has the word women in its actual name needs a series of group therapy circles to figure out what the word means, and pointing out that the Women's Tennis Association and the Olympic movement have both moved toward genetic sex screening, while the WNBA schedules more meetings. Whether you love that take or hate it, that clip traveled, and it traveled fast. Because the phrase listening sessions is very hard to defend when you are trying to look decisive. But that was not even the wild part. The memo also confirmed the single most important structural fact in this entire saga, and it is one that gets almost zero airtime. Engelbert wrote that unlike the eligibility rules of some other leagues and governing bodies, the WNBA's player eligibility rules are collectively bargained. That is enormous. Legal analysts at Sportico broke down what it means, because collectively bargained rules are shielded by what is called the non-statutory labor exemption, which protects negotiated workplace rules from antitrust challenges. In plain English, the league cannot simply announce a new eligibility standard on a Tuesday. It has to sit across a table from the Players Association and negotiate it. And the Players Association, whose president is Nneka Ogwumike, put out its own statement the very same Friday emphasizing diversity and inclusion and making it clear the union would not allow its members to be used as political props. So you have a commissioner who cannot act alone, a union that has already planted its flag, and a contract with a 13-word rule and no definition. That is not a cover-up. That is gridlock. And gridlock is exactly what lets a rumor swallow an entire season. Now let's talk about what this did to actual human beings, because this is where it got genuinely ugly. The backlash to Cunningham did not stay online. It followed the fever on the road. On July 28th in Seattle, at Climate Pledge Arena, a group organized a rally outside the building before the fever played the storm. Inside the arena, 2 teenage girls sat courtside wearing women's sports advocacy shirts, holding a homemade sign thanking Cunningham for speaking up for girls. And a co-owner of the Seattle Storm, Celeste Keaton, berated those girls to their faces. The league did not shrug that one off either. She was fined and suspended over the courtside incident. A local retail manager was also caught on video going after the girls and their mothers. Then in Portland, supporters rallied outside while the crowd inside booed Cunningham. Then in Minnesota, the crowd booed her every time she entered the game and every single time she touched the ball. And outside, according to reporting on the scene, activists shouted through megaphones, used derogatory language, and tried to pull apparel out of supporters' hands until arena security physically stepped in to separate the two sides. 3 cities, 3 standoffs, over a sentence in a magazine profile from an interview conducted in March. And the coaching ranks did not exactly cool it down. Minnesota Lynx head coach Cheryl Reeve wore a shirt reading "Trans kids belong on the sideline" during a nationally covered game against Cunningham's Fever, which is about as subtle as a fire alarm. Seattle's Stephanie Dolson wore a "Trans rights are human rights" shirt when the Storm faced Indiana on July 28th. Golden State's Natalie Nakasi voiced support for more inclusive policy. And here's the one that stung Fever fans the most. Because Indiana's own head coach Stephanie White was asked about her players' comments and said she does not ever believe exclusion is the answer, adding that she is not educated enough on the different governing bodies and levels of sport to speak to specifics. Look, White is entitled to her view, and she was asked a question she never signed up to answer. But when your own player is getting booed in 4 different buildings and the loudest voice in her corner is not the person on her bench, fans notice. They noticed immediately. And Cunningham herself, to her enormous credit, handled it like a professional, saying she would let people speak for themselves, that she wanted to get back to basketball, that it has always been about basketball, and that there is so much good happening in the WNBA right now that the focus should stay on the players who are performing at an absurd level. That is a 29-year-old role player showing more media discipline than half the executives in this story. But that wasn't the whole story either. Because while everyone was arguing about a hypothetical, 2 men decided to test the hypothetical for real. On Friday, August 7th, the same day the memo went out, former NBA players Enes Kanter Freedom and Royce White both publicly declared themselves eligible for the WNBA draft, saying they identify as women. Kanter Freedom's statement was surgical, saying that after reviewing the current eligibility guidelines, he was officially declaring himself a prospect, and that if simply declaring who you are is all that is required, then he meets every single requirement necessary to compete. Royce White went on live television and said he is having a blast in what he called his feminine era. Now, obviously, neither of these men is getting drafted. This is a stunt. Everybody involved knows it is a stunt. But stunts are how you stress test a rule. And that is precisely the point they were making. Because a rule with no written criteria cannot formally reject anybody without inventing the criteria on the spot, which is the exact ad hoc mess legal commentators have been warning about. Meanwhile, the new rival women's league, Project B, announced it would launch with a gender eligibility policy aligned with the Olympic and International Basketball Framework, which quietly puts a competitor in the position of having a published rule while the established league is still scheduling meetings. And internationally, the ground has already moved. World Boxing introduced the SRY gene test, which screens for the Y chromosome. World Athletics and the International Ski Federation have introduced testing too. The International Olympic Committee has been driving toward a unified framework for the female category. The WNBA is now, by a wide margin, the biggest women's sports property on Earth without a published standard. So what happens to the actual basketball team caught in the middle of all this? Because here is the genuinely amazing part. Indiana has been winning through all of it. The Fever sit at 22 wins and 12 losses after 34 games, coming off a 98-87 win over the Dallas Wings on August 14th and a statement 106-92 beatdown of the New York Liberty on August 11th. They have been one of the hottest teams in the league down the stretch. Caitlin Clark is putting up a career-best 19.7 points, 7.7 assists, and 4.1 rebounds. And she notched the 4th triple-double of her career in Portland in the middle of the loudest week of the entire controversy, which is the most Caitlin Clark thing imaginable. She has been managing a lingering back injury all season. She has been on a minutes restriction since returning, she has missed games, and she was still listed as probable heading into the road trip. Aaliyah Boston has been dealing with a lower leg issue and is also probable. Clark's own read on it was pure competitor, saying August is really tough, that they are playing a lot of the top teams, that they will see what they are made of, and that this is exactly what gets you ready for the playoffs. And Griner, for what it is worth, has been battling too. Missing 4 games with a left knee injury and averaging 13.6 points, 5.7 rebounds, and 1.8 blocks a night for a Connecticut team going nowhere. 2 women, both hobbling through August, both being used as characters in an argument neither of them started. So here is where it lands. And here's the part I want you to sit with. The scandal everybody is chasing is not the scandal. There is no hidden file, no buried medical report, no secret ruling that got shredded in a conference room. The actual secret is dumber and far more damaging than that. The most valuable women's league in the world wrote a 13-word eligibility rule, never defined the key term, locked that rule inside a collectively bargained agreement that takes 2 parties to reopen, and then acted stunned when the entire country started asking what the word means. The commissioner is holding listening sessions. The union is drawing lines. 2 retired NBA players are trolling the draft. A team owner got fined and suspended for going after teenagers. A rival league is launching with the policy the WNBA does not have. And 1 guard from Missouri who answered a question honestly in March is getting booed in 4 cities in August. Whatever side of this you land on, that is a leadership failure, and it is going to follow this league straight into the off-season bargaining table. And I would bet money that the moment this season ends, that quiet task force turns into something with actual written language attached to it. Because the alternative is doing this all over again next summer with the draft class watching. If you made it this far, you already know more about this story than 90% of the people arguing about it online. So do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe so you do not miss the follow-up when that policy language finally drops, and tell me down in the comments, should the league publish a written standard right now, or is silence the smarter play? I read every comment, I pinned the best ones, and I will see you in the next one.